right, so I'm gonna make this
new
easy on
software.
myself.
Did you get it working?
I literally haven't looked at it yet. I'm not joking when I say that I got up from the bed yesterday morning, made it to the couch, and fell on the couch and was just in and out of consciousness all day.
No, I mean I was just checking. I wasn't being critical or anything. Just asking.
I am gonna look at it. It's on my my list of things I've got to do. But
you wish you wouldn't be sick and just do stuff for the show all the time.
Well, I'm pissed because I had a full final start next week, and I needed to get cracking on studying and stuff like that too. But literally, I opened up my computer and tried to watch a few videos, and couldn't even do that. I just even watching the computer screen moving was making me nauseous. Could
you imagine what the real virus would have done?
Oh, Roger and I both decided I would be dead.
I guess I got lucky or just didn't feel it because of the being sick for my allergies. But yeah, I really had almost no effects. So sorry you did though.
I mean, it happens. It affects people different ways. I don't think, Matt, you didn't have a hard time with it either, did you?
No. I mean, I had the only
sore shoulder.
Yeah, my shoulders felt stiff and a little achy, and I wasn't even sure if that was connected. But then, interestingly enough, just a few days ago, I read a post by Greg Capullo, and he said that his shoulders were stiff and achy after the second shot. And I was like, okay, well, maybe that is a thing. But
mine were after both shots, actually.
Now, are you talking about your injection site or your shoulder joint?
No, the joint and the muscle going from my shoulder almost down to my elbow.
Okay. Yeah, I just had stiff joints. That's what mine was. I was like, man, what the hell? Yeah, but that was it.
Yeah.
So my shoulders weren't doing that, but my hips were. My hips and my legs were all very achy, very stiff, hard to get up and move. So it's it hits people different ways, man. And
when we turn 40, that'll be that way permanently.
Right. And we say all of that to say it's all a minor inconvenience. Go get your damn shot so the world can get on with its life.
100%. 24 to 36 hours of feeling poopy is worth its weight in gold. And the fact that I'm going to go see my grandma in 2 weeks. I'm going to schedule lunches to go hang out with, I've got a list of old people that I haven't seen in a year and a half. I'm just going to go on a geriatric parade.
Yeah. You got to go see my mom too.
This is not unlike. This is not unlike. In fact, it's pretty similar to so many key points in our lives. It lines up with Frank Herbert's Dune. And in Frank Herbert's Dune, there's what's called the spice agony. And that is where you take a super concentrated dose of spice and go through the spice agony, but you come out the other side awakened. The sleeper has awakened even. Is the terminology used. So once again, friends, reference Frank Herbert's Dune for little lessons in life.
Hey, fear is the mind killer. Go get your shot.
That's right.
See what I did there? That was for you, Matt. That was just for you.
Yes. Yes.
Well, all right, everybody. The spice agony aside, this is episode 173 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. I am happy to be here and fully vaccinated Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance, returning from a week off last week. Do you guys miss me?
We did.
Or did you just prefer the shorter show? It's okay, Matt. You can say you prefer the shorter show.
I was surprised how much fun I had talking about you while you weren't here.
Oh, yeah. I guess I need to go listen to that episode and see how how much I really was missed.
Well, see, if we or I don't do these things, you won't ever give it a second thought to go away. So when you go back and listen to it, you'll be like, I don't remember that. Maybe I shouldn't miss unless it's absolutely necessary.
Well, believe it or not,
in this case, it absolutely was because I was not home. So,
believe it or not, the show actually wasn't that much shorter. We came in kind of at the same time mark.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm going to read that into Caleb really, really talked a lot.
No. Matt was chatty. Matt had a lot he needed to say. So
yeah.
Just go. He was like a little Energizer bunny of podcasting. So
fantastic.
No, we are glad to have you back. We did miss you. Obviously, there's a giant hole in the void that we can't fill when you're gone, and we hope you got all accomplished that needed to be accomplished. And glad to hear that you fought off the green as it was trying to invade your senses and put you down.
Yeah, I'm still fighting it. It's still a good battle, but you've seen that commercial, right? With like the giant flower monster attacking New York. That's how I feel.
Nature is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Just won't.
Yeah, Stephanie's like, we have Flonase. I'm like, that stuff never works for me.
Need a bubble. Well, all right. Allergies aside, I mean, if you have allergies, that sounds like a good reason to stay inside and read some comic books, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys get anything read this week?
I read a few things.
Nice. Well, how about you drop a short stack on us?
I read Daredevil number 29 by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Cicchetto. I'm not even going to tell you what this book is about because I've been telling you too damn long to go read this book. And if you still aren't reading this book, you're just flat out missing out.
True that.
Thor number 14, also by Marvel. Donny Cates, Nick Klein, Matt Wilson. This wrapped up the Donald Blake story in a fairly amazing way. I'm not going to spoil it. Do what?
Fairly amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was wrapped up really, really well. It tied Thor back and Loki back to the original mythology, which Marvel tends to stray from time to time, like when they changed Mjolnir. But yeah, this wrapped up that story very, very well. And then I also read Proctor Road number 2, Boom Studios. Grant Morrison, Alex Child, Naomi Franquez, and Tamara Bonvillain, I think is how you say her name. Anyways, I talked about this book on the show a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. This book is quickly becoming one of my favorite horror books out right now. So if you have a chance to pick it up, do so.
Nice.
Well,
my short stack, starting with Aftershock Comics, I read Maniac of New York, number 3 by Elliot Kalan and Andrea Muti. This continues to be, I don't know, better than it deserves to be, in my opinion. I just really dig this story. It's not a complicated story. It's a pretty simple story. 2 female police officers going after a serial killer, but it's just told in a very compelling way, and the artwork is really good. So continue to recommend that one. I also read from Marvel, Maestro War and Pax number 4. This is by Peter David, Javier Pena, and Herman Peralta. I love this story, man. This is so good, and the artwork is great. There's some real and key points in this one. There's some really great and funny Doctor Doom pages in this one. Peter David is just really, really doing well here, which he
co-signed,
which he tends to do. I mean, Peter David has just been so dependable for so many years, decades even. It's really something. I really feel like he's not really given the credit that he deserves overall.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing on my short stack from DC, Batman Urban Legends. This is number 2. I dropped this title, which is a shame. And I want to mention it because the Chip Zdarsky story in this is a series of 4 different stories per book. One's Batman story, one's an Oracle story. We have The Outsiders, and then Grifter for some reason. And the Red Hood Batman story by Chip Zdarsky is really good. There's actually 3 artists that work on this book, this one short story: Eddie Barrows, Eber Ferreira, and Julio Ferreira. But it's an $8 book. And
right.
it feels like it feels like a poor attempt at Marvel Comics Presents, frankly. You know, and I say poor attempt because it's an $8 book. So anyway, I just had to mention that. It's a shame I dropped it, which is a shame because I'm enjoying the story, the Chip Zdarsky and the artist story I mentioned. The Grifter story in it is not bad either. I mean, it's the first Matthew Rosenberg story that I've read that I really actually liked. Everything else that Rosenberg has done has been kind of okay to me. But that Grifter is also, the artist on that one is Ryan Benjamin. But the other two stories sandwiched in between those two, I don't know anybody that likes them, frankly, because I've asked around, see if it's just me. But it's just a shame I'm dropping a book, a story I like, because of marketing.
Yeah, I mean, the concept's good, right? To give us all the Bat families in one book so that we don't have 10 books to buy. But if you're going to do that, you got to make it all the stories good to make that $8 price tag worth the cost. Or at least the majority of the stories.
I'm going to ask the question that I always ask about these kind of things. How many pages is it?
I mean, it's oversized, of course, but yeah. I don't know how many pages this is.
Not oversized enough to deserve $8.
I don't know. It wouldn't matter how big it is. I mean, maybe if this was a 70-page book for $8, then I would still pay, to get 2 out of 4 good stories out of it. But no, I mean, I'm going to say this is, maybe a 40-page book, something like that. Maybe a little bit more.
I think his problem is not as much the price tag as the fact that for that price tag, you're only getting 2 good stories out of it.
Yeah. Well,
and not to try and speak for Matt, but
and what I was trying to say is, yes, that's true. And it would have to, the book would have to be double in size, at least double in size, for me to continue to pay $8 to get 2 out of 4 stories I enjoy out of it.
Right. Yeah, that's always a struggle I have, even with, like with the DC Black Label stuff back when they were putting out those oversized issues, even for what we were getting and some stories that I really, really liked, paying $6-7 for a single issue, even if they were oversized, just, even for one story that I'm really liking, man, that's, for the same price, I can get 2 other comics somewhere else, or, add $5 more, I get an entire trade of a different story. It's really hard to stomach that.
Yeah. DC Comics shenanigans.
Shit bees expensive.
Yep.
It's an expensive hobby, and it's just getting pricier. But I mean, we are getting great stories across the board for the most part. And some of those I read this week for my short stack. So I don't know if you guys picked this up or not, but I grabbed Green Lantern #1, and really, really enjoyed this. I didn't know what to expect. So this is coming out of the last, the Morrison and Sharp Green Lantern that I think all of us kind of dropped off of, or at least stopped reading, because none of us knew what the fudge was going on. At least I didn't. I couldn't follow it. It got real Morrison-y in that second half real fast. But this is not that. I didn't have that problem. This was written by Geoffrey Thorne, art by Dexter Soy and Marco Santucci, colors by Alex Sinclair, and letters by Rob Lee. And this actually, it's kind of a Lanterns team book. It starts off on the remnants of Oa, where the Green Lanterns are, that they're based out of there. I mean, everybody who knows Green Lantern knows what Oa is, but essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to become part of this like galactic empire, kind of like the UN, but of planets. And there's some pushback for some people there, and they're trying to earn their spot, and they get attacked. But out of this, you get a really great picture of who this new quote unquote teen lantern is. And this is a young woman who has this like lantern gauntlet. She basically built her own Green Lantern power gauntlet. And so she's a lantern, but she doesn't have a ring. Like, she doesn't have a power battery. And it's trying to figure out where she fits into the overall story of the Lanterns. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, the art was great. It's going to be a fun adventure. There's a lot of cool things happening. If your thing with Green Lanterns is you like seeing all the different aliens and stuff, you're going to love this book, because It's basically that scene from Star Wars where they're in the Senate, and you just go around and you see all of these creatures, but it's that with, you know, the Green Lantern in the DC universe. Next, I grabbed a new series, another number one. This one's from Image. It's called Home. This was written by Julio Anta, Aniko Wisniak, and Brian Valencia did some of the artwork on it. And then Hassan Otsmane Elohu did I want to say the letters on this book. Let me double check that, make sure I'm right. Yeah. He did the lettering on this book. To say that I enjoyed this story would be weird considering the subject matter. Essentially, it's a mother and a son traveling up from Guatemala on the train to try to get asylum at the border. And this is happening at the exact moment that the prior presidential administration in our own country started the family separation policy. And so you see a lot of that treatment. You see a lot of the people who are part of that government agency who disagree with those policies really struggling with it to enforce it. But there's a little bit of a twist at the end of it in that the boy who is one of the key figures, he manifests some type of power. So there's like I don't want to say a superhero element to it, but there's a superpower element to it at the end of it as he's being kept in containment. So that's going to be an interesting story to kind of see it develop and unfold, and see how it all works out and what's happening with it. It's one of those situations where, you know, life affects art. And so I'm really curious to see how it goes. I thought it was great. I know that it's kind of going across the board right now. A lot of different outlets are talking about it. And it's being really promoted. So I'm glad I picked it up because it was hard to find. I don't think our shop that we shop at bought a lot of them, but I know they had some for the shelves, and it sold out by noon the day that it came out. And then last but certainly not least, I picked up, I say I picked it up, it's in my pull box, but Karmen #2 by Guillaume March. This book still continues to be just visually stunning. It is absolutely gorgeous, page after page after page. You know, we covered the first issue as a roundtable book. This young woman dealing with, an attempt at suicide has become untethered from the quote unquote mortal plane. And she just gets to fly around and see what people are doing and check in on all of her friends and family in that moment. So this character essentially is a specter of some sort, not necessarily a ghost, because I don't think she's dead, quote unquote, yet, but she's a disembodied spirit, and she just floats through this whole book basically just buck ass naked, swimming and seeing the world, and the main figure, this not the main figure, but the character of Death in this little pink-haired head with a skeleton, kind of coaxing her through life or unlife or whatever you want to call it. It's just a really next level art by Guillaume March, and an incredible story. So I can't wait to see where this one goes either. Did either of you pick up the second issue?
No.
I wasn't sure if Craig did or not.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. I did not pick it up, but it's not. I somehow missed the series. I had to get the first issue on digital, so I'll probably pick this up in trade when it comes out.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're, it's always weird because you're talking about a story with a lot of nudity in it, and the nudity is not the point. But even for somebody who's generally, not, I don't seek out images of a lot of naked ladies, just to be real honest. But the way that he draws these women in here are gorgeous. Curves in all the right places. They're beautiful women, which I know again is not the point of the story, but the way that he draws them, it's very sensual. So I was down with it. Just as an entire package, it's a really cool little statement that's being made there. But
nice.
All right. Well, you guys want to talk about some Batman?
Yeah, let's talk about some Batman.
Nice. All right. So kids at home, folks who are enjoying this podcast, as you know, every week, we all pick out a book off the shelf and we decide to read it, see what's going on with it. And then, kind of ping back and forth off each other, see what each other's thoughts on it are, interpretations of it are. And this week is more of that. We decided to read Batman the Detective, #1. And we'll get into what that was, but I just want to say there's no really good way to talk about a comic without spoiling a few things. So do yourself a favor if you haven't read this book or any of the other books that we talk about on the show, and go read them first, and then come back and listen. Hit the pause button, because we don't want to ruin the experience for anybody. But with that being said, check the show notes, because I put time signatures in there for your convenience, because I'm a caring and generous and benevolent person. That's why I do it. Not at all because I get nasty emails if I don't. So, that's just how it goes. This book was this book was actually suggested by one Mr. Matt Trogdon. He knew this was coming, and he said, "Hey, this is the book," because he was excited about it, and I was glad to see that. It is written by Mr. Tom Taylor, with art by Andy Kubert, the great Andy Kubert. And then it looks like the colors were done by somebody named Anderson, but because I can't find the damn title page in this book, I can't tell you his first name, because that's what kind of struggle bus I'm on this morning. So all in all, before we dive into the meat and potatoes of it, what did you guys think?
I liked the book. I think Craig
and once again, my mute would not turn off. I'm sorry, I keep turning it to mute so I'm not sniffling and coughing in your ear. But I enjoyed this book. I'm kind of a sucker for old Bruce Wayne stories where he has to be the detective a little bit more than just the vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of enjoying that aspect of it.
And it's Brad Anderson on colors, Caleb.
Brad Anderson, thank you. Like I said, I usually have like the title page of these things bookmarked, and I can't for the life of me find out where this one is as I'm flipping through it. No, I enjoyed it as well. I kind of like Craig said, I'm always a sucker for like the later in life versions of not just Batman, but for a lot of these characters. I think when you see quote unquote what's next for them, it's interesting. I also think it's kind of impossible to read this book and not think about things like the Dark Knight. And so it's always fun to channel that, to read these stories in the lens of, what would Frank Miller do, or what did Frank Miller do? And so I really had fun with it. Seeing what all was encapsulated in this little adventure. And there were so many of those points that kind of lined up with things like the Dark Knight, with the Miller work, that you could see it was really a very large influence on this. It was kind of a love letter to it in many ways, I think, while not being so beholden to it that it was just repetitive. Tom Taylor he's a great writer, and obviously Kubert is just Kubert. Like, there's not a lot that needs to be added to that. He's who he is for a reason. But Tom Taylor has this really good way of like reaching back and taking elements and remnants of the past, of the work that came before, and like remolding them, reworking them, and making them fun and energetic stories of today. That way they don't feel dated. And I think that he won with this book. And I'll get into it, but he won while doing something that I don't think generally works with Batman. And he was successful at it. So where we're at with this story is, like you said, this is a little bit of old man Bruce, and he is having a later in life crisis. His war on crime has not been successful. He hasn't stopped crime. He's helped people in the moment. He's helped the people who needed help, but he hasn't been the deterring force that I think he always wanted to be. And so he's kind of had enough. He's gonna head out and leave for a little bit. And there's been something that's happened that is going to draw him away from Gotham City. It's going to take him over across the pond. There is this, I don't know if you could call them an organization or a conglomerate or what, but there is this kind of terrorist syndicate who is wreaking havoc on the world, and they're doing so while specifically calling out Batman. Like these people have boarded a plane, and they take the plane down, and as the plane's going down and they're getting ready to, the actual terrorists are getting ready to jump out, they put on these Batman masks and dive out. But they don't get so lucky. On one of these planes, there is a British superheroine, and her name is Knight. And she is on there, and she tries to stop them, but there's only so much you can do, at 30,000 feet in the air. She latches on to one of them, tries to ride down the parachute, but to call it a rough landing is an understatement. She gets pretty jacked up. And this event, where the plane lands, you see on a building, Batman 147 spray painted on the wall there. And of course, this gets broadcast everywhere, and Bruce sees it, so it draws him out. Right, he's got to go across the pond. And when he gets over there, he meets Knight's protege, this young woman of color who has, she's taken the mantle trying to be a superhero in her own right, and she calls herself the Squire. And they've got to team up. They got to team up to find out what's going on, how these people are being targeted. And Batman really steps in to showcase some of his detective skills, some of the mechanics of how he works. He has this weird like impulse EMT thing that he shoots out, and it's supposed to bring, let him know, DNA, fingerprints. It's going to highlight things kind of like in a video game that you would need to follow. But one thing that this does is it shows the other half, the quote unquote non-scientific things, clues that he should look out for. And all of a sudden he sees behind the Squire this specter named Gentleman Ghost, that is there because Gentleman Ghost feeds on fear, and Gentleman Ghost wants to wreak havoc on this area. I mean, it's a crash site. It's, lots of death involved there, and it goes after Batman. It like plunges his hand into his chest to try to see, and Batman has fear, but not the fear like everyone else has, because he's, in a gravelly voice, he's Batman. But Batman also is always prepared, so he's got these gloves on, right? And he reaches and he grabs the ghost by the arm, pulls his hand out of his chest, and just proceeds to whip his ass real quick. So because Batman has got these gloves as a gift from another figure, and you need to go read the book to figure out who that was. I'm not going to tell you. Have some fun doing it. And so after that happens, they go to visit Knight in the hospital, and they start having this long conversation about why he's there, what he's doing. And these assholes in Batman masks, they're not finished. They want to take out Knight, so they attack the hospital. And Batman and the Squire have to defend the hospital and keep everybody away from Knight, keep her safe, so they can figure out where they're going next. And spoiler warning. So we said it. So what they figure out at the end of this particular book is that the people on the plane, the people that these masked Batman vigilante villains have attacked, were not picked at random. These are all people who are either directly or 1 degree of separation away from folks that Batman has saved. These are all people that lives that he saved, and this little syndicate society of evildoers are going out there and they're taking their lives, as if Batman never mattered. So really just kind of erasing any and all of the work he's done. I thought this was fun. Like I said, it definitely brought me back and centered me in the Frank Miller world. I think part of that's because you can see the direct line to Kubert's artistic style in this to some of the Frank Miller work. And Kubert's long been I won't say an alkalite, but he's long been a dipping his quill in that ink bottle, so to speak, kind of channeling that style.
That sounds like a euphemism.
It could be. So I think this is a fun story. Again, I'm always a fan of what Tom Taylor does. I think when Tom Taylor is able to tell these little Elseworld tales, be it the Injustice stuff or be it the DC Zombies quote unquote stories that he's told, he's really good at playing in these out of continuity sandboxes. And
well, I don't know that this is out of continuity.
It may
necessarily.
not be.
It's
it
just
in
in the future, which may or may not ever happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely not out of continuity because he references Alfred being gone.
Right.
Yeah, since Tom King killed him.
Yeah.
Matt's not holding a grudge about that at all.
Hey, he's been orphaned twice.
Actually, I totally am.
Yeah.
Hot rage is what I would call it.
I really I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the story. I mean, it was just a good first entry into a Batman book.
Mm-hmm. I think what I like the most about it is, and we've talked about this on the show before, like there's a lot of nostalgia in this just because of the way the book is designed and told, but it's not nostalgia just for the sake of nostalgia. You know what I mean? Like there's nostalgia in here just as a byproduct, but it's not the forefront. The story still takes the forefront of it. And I really appreciated that. You know, because so often it's just like, hey, let's go back in time and let's just rehash things that have already happened and stuff just for the sake of reminding you that you read the story before. And this,
So I don't
wasn't
pick
that.
up any nostalgia in this. What are you picking up as nostalgia?
So some of the design of the art, like I said, it feels very much like Frank Miller, the way that those things are drawn. And it reminds me of kind of a lot of the Batman stories that were, presented in the late 80s, late 90s stuff, just in the visual stylings of it, which there's an argument to be made that Frank Miller is not of a time, that Frank Miller's art is, or that design is timeless. But for me, the nostalgia was in the art. It made me want to go back and look at those, old Adam Kubert books or old Andy Kubert books, and old Frank Miller artwork, because you don't see a lot of that style anymore. It's kind of like, work from Silvestri or stuff. You can see people who every once in a while repeat it today. But
I don't. Yeah, so I'm seeing Kubert doing what Kubert has always done. I don't see any Frank Miller in this. I think that's kind of a disservice to paint that brush with Andy Kubert's work. So I can't. I'm going to have to do a hard disagree on a Frank Miller theme in this book, because I'm seeing what Kubert has always done.
okay.
And the action scenes, on that note, the action scenes are like the standout in this book to me. Man, Kubert illustrates some great action scenes.
He does. As far as like his sequential storytelling, you can't get past that. The thing I love that he does in this book are not necessarily the action scenes, but it's the architecture and the rooms. Like I love the way that he sets up the Batcave. You get that one scene where right before Bruce leaves, he walks through the mansion, and the way that the sun is shining through the windows, all the furniture is covered up and everything. Those big sweeping spreads, to me, I love when he does that, because it's just the way that he lays out those pages is gorgeous. But and when you talk about some nostalgia too, it's the way that Batman looks, like he's doing the whole like goggles on his forehead and trench coat. It just takes you back to that time, or at least it takes me back to that time. I think it's hilarious too that one of the briefcases has a bullet hole in it that he's in one of his suitcases, but that cracks me up. But one of the things I said, like there is something that I don't think 99% of the time works with Batman, and that's when they take Batman out of Gotham. For the most part, I've rarely ever enjoyed a Batman that's outside of Gotham, because it's just Gotham is such a part and parcel of who Batman is.
But I really liked when he was on the beach doing push-ups.
I did too, but for other reasons.
Man.
But
sarcasm.
But also, just to throw that out there, that wasn't Batman. That was Bruce Wayne. Bruce gets to take vacations, but Batman being Batman outside of a city that's not Gotham doesn't work very well. But at least in this story, it did. Like I didn't feel that. Maybe it's because of the.
I can't let that pass.
What?
Yeah, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad.
Bruce Wayne wasn't taking a vacation. He was hiding from the events that were happening in Gotham. I know that's a different book, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but
he was scared and hanging out with his girlfriend. Just like
he
Batman
was literally
has always done.
hiding from what was happening in Gotham, letting Robin try to save Alfred and failing.
He was in his underwear. That's all I got out of that.
Okay. We can go forward now. I couldn't leave it at Bruce Wayne was taking a vacation.
My man gets to relax every once in a while. He's had a hard life.
But Gotham is a character in and of itself. So when you take Batman out of Gotham, it is weird. Everything feels out of place and out of context. So
having said that, if there's a real world version of Gotham, it is London. So, especially, like Victorian era London, which I know we're not in and this book's not taking place in. But, to me, if you're going to put Batman in a real world city, London's as good of a place to go as any.
Yeah, I think that I get what you're saying, definitely. I think in any book, one of the ways to get past the fact that you're not in Gotham, though, is to show that wherever you're at, as long as you put him in the quote unquote like seedy underbelly of the city, there's something kind of universal about that imagery. Like, an alley is an alley, so to speak. If somebody's threatening,
it's just that Gotham is all an alley,
right? Yeah, especially crime alley. But so, and I think that's one trick to get past it. So, hint to future Batman writers, if you're going to do that, follow Tom's lead. And just show that, because there's something universal in that. Which, again, that was the thing that really struck me after I got out of this book. I'm like, hey, he's not in Gotham, and I actually enjoyed this story, because that does not happen.
Well, I mean, for me, it was the draw of him being a detective. I mean, yes, he did punch a ghost, and that's impressive. But I mean, for the most part, this is him being a detective, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's doing analyzing and running computer background, while he's fighting and protecting, and he's getting beat up, but using his old man abilities to kind of fend off the bad guys. So, it's and then the end, when he's got the dude hanging from the cable while
right.
He's just casually having a conversation. Is there any more scene that's more Batman than that?
Yeah, that was great. I've always liked those interrogation scenes. Those are
he's just letting the guy hang there, and he's having a casual conversation with Knight and I'm sorry, what's her name? Squire. Yeah, he's having a casual conversation with them about what they're going to do next, while this guy's just hanging from a cable outside of the fourth story of the hospital.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be neat seeing him go on with Squire, as well as in this story, as a little sidekick, because she's not a Robin. She's something different. She's had training through the night, so it's gonna be fun to see how they work together.
One of the great lines in the book is that he makes a comment about, well, she's a little young, and Knight says, yeah, like you haven't had younger,
right? But yeah, so I think I'm gonna carry through with this book. I think it's gonna be 6 issues.
Yeah,
6-issue series.
I'm definitely on it till the end.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, unless it takes a hard right turn here somewhere,
Right.
Otherwise, I'm on it till the end.
So which cover did you guys get? So the one I got, they did that thing where they put like I don't really know what you call it, but there's like an outer cover and an inner cover. So on the outer cover, it just says Batman the Detective. It's all like in gray, and then you see bats flying at you. On the inside, you get, I guess, what would be the regular cover, where it's Batman standing in front of old Ben hanging off a wall somewhere.
I just have the regular cover version. I think the one you have is probably kind of intended for a sketch version.
It could be.
Yeah, I have the regular cover with him in front of Big Ben, which is absolutely a beautiful cover.
Yeah, it's gorgeous
with the red background, and
mm-hmm. That kind of looks like I was looking at that. It reminds me of some old school Capullo work too. So
it does. I thought the same thing. That does have a very Greg Capullo feel to it.
It actually does. Yeah. We'll give you that one today, Caleb.
Hey, I'll take it. I'm reaching here. Well, no,
we're gonna beat you up about everything else, but we'll give you that the cover looks like Capullo.
Look, it's nothing I don't earn, so I can take it. I'm a big boy.
Capullo. I don't know why I say Capullo.
Part of the vaccine is the ability to shield off the haters.
I'm waiting for my 5G and special powers to kick in.
Well, you said it earlier, right? Like old man powers. That's a thing, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It usually involves a lot of sleep and complaining about the weather.
Shooting Metamucil in people's eyes. Well, nice. So yeah, this made its way on the pull list. I'm definitely going to be picking this up. Loving always some Tom Taylor. That dude is such a strong writer. If
you're a fan of Batman, and especially like I've said 3 or 4 times now, the detective aspects, which we don't get a whole lot of anymore. This is definitely a book you want to pick up.
Yeah. I need Tom Taylor to branch
and he
out.
punches a ghost.
He does with special magic gloves. I love it.
Yeah. And you need Tom Taylor to branch out of Kitchoff 3 times now. So
no, you're good. I would like to see what Tom Taylor does outside of the DC universe. I know he's written a few things that don't take place there, but that's for the most part what he's doing. I guess he has an exclusivity contract with them, but I would love to see, be it, if he dabbles in the Marvel universe for a while, or if he does some creator-owned stuff. I'd like to see him. Not that I don't enjoy everything that he writes at DC for the most part, but I'd like to see him spread his wings a little bit. So, because he sure
made that X-23 character line compelling.
Mm-hmm. I forgot that was him.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit! He did. He was the hunt. That was one with Honey Badger, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, see, I need to go back and reread that. That was so good. But I get that must have been before he locked into the exclusivity contract or something. Because, like I said, for the last few years, he's done nothing but DC.
Yeah.
Totally forgot he did that X-23 run. That was such a solid run.
Anything with Honey Badger.
Mm-hmm. She hasn't shown back up, has she?
Yeah,
it's not anything that I've seen, but
maybe I imagined it. I thought I saw her like as a background character in something.
Oh, X-23 has been shelved pretty, she just showed up in this last week's X-Men title, but she's been kind of shelved.
Yeah.
That's a character that I did not really think I'd be into at all, but
X-23.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought, oh boy, here we go. I just thought
I've enjoyed every story they've done with her for the most part over the years.
Yeah. And that's where I was going with that is Tom Taylor really made her a compelling character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there you have it.
Nice.
Tom Taylor better than Tom King.
Nobody said that. But you. Nobody said that but you. Anyway, tell me something you read this week, Craig. You're in the hot seat. Changing the subject.
So I read a book called Lock and Key, Hell and Gone. Number
Weird.
1. Right? And this should be surprising to everybody that's listened to any episodes of the show.
Matt, send me a selfie of your shocked face real quick.
I know, right?
What? This is a crossover publishing between DC and IDW. It's written by Joe Hill, drawn by Gabriel Rodriguez, colors by Jay Photos, which is an amazing name for a colorist, and Sean Lee doing letters. So this book starts in 1921, before the events that we know of for Lock and Key, other than they've been referenced in the back, kind of back matter, how we got to where we were. But it starts with Mary Locke watching her father struggle literally with the death of his son, her brother. And when I mean literally, he uses one of the keys to bring his son up from hell, who he has killed him. The son killed himself, and the father's trying to make amends with him, and the son will have nothing to do with it. So using one of her keys from the Locke house, the Anywhere key, Mary transports herself to England to the occultist Roderick Burgess's house, which if you've read Neil Gaiman's Sandman, you'll recognize that name as the man who has Morpheus, otherwise known as Dream, currently locked in his basement. Mary is greeted at the door by a teenage boy wearing Morpheus's helm, the mantle of his kingdom, the symbol that lets everyone know that he is king of the dreaming. And the curious boy wants to know if he is dreaming, and Mary assures him that while she likes to be every young boy's dream and every wife's nightmare, he is currently not dreaming. She is taken to Roderick, who she bargains with to see the entity he has stored in his basement. She has to give him one of the keys from Locke House, and she gives him the match key, which is a key that will literally light anything on fire. And so he, in exchange, lets her see the being that's in her basement. And of course, the being, as you, I'm sure, surmised at this point, is Morpheus. She asks Morpheus how she can make a deal with the devil in return for her brother's soul. And Morpheus's only response is to draw a picture of his mask on the glass of his prison. So Mary leaves and later returns using her key. But this time she returns to Roderick's son's bedroom, and in exchange for the Anywhere key, because he wants to see the world, she is able to take the mask. I mean, she kind of tricks him. She tells him to go see the places he wants to go, just bring her back the key. But really, she just wants him out of the room so she can get his mask. So once she's got Morpheus' mask, she lays down on the bed and soon finds herself in the land of the dreaming, where old friends from the Sandman book show up, like Cain and Abel. And of course, they assume that she is the master returning, because why else would she be wearing his mantle? She eventually finds her way to the library, where we find the situation is more dire than just Morpheus missing from the dreaming. I'm not going to tell you exactly what goes on at the end, but this is an absolutely brilliant combining of two of my favorite, not just sequential stories, but two of my favorite stories. Joe Hill enters into the dreaming as easily as if he had created the characters and universe himself. And Gabriel Rodriguez's art is just absolutely amazing. You wouldn't know the difference between his version of Morpheus and Sam Keith's.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil Gaiman, Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, they just have to be happy knowing that these characters are at least temporarily in the hands of Joe Hill and Rodriguez. And, Joe Hill just continues to be a much better writer than his father. Everything he does, I find absolutely entertaining. And I really, at this point, want to see Hill and Rodriguez do a Daniel as sleep story. I mean, as dream story.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I haven't read this, but I have read some of the stuff that Joe Hill's done in this universe before. And yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody else who knows the mechanics of this story whose name is not Neil Gaiman in any better form than he does.
Well, I mean, you really can't tell that it's not Gaiman and Sam Keith doing this story.
Mm-hmm.
You just really can't. It's the characters are drawn almost identical to Sam Keith's version of these characters, including Cain and Abel. There's a really brilliant scene when she shows up in the dreaming. She actually is laying on Abel's grave, and for some reason decides to dig up Abel, who is, of course, rotting and has rats crawling out of him and so forth. And she takes off running and ends up at Cain's house. And Cain's like, "Oh yeah, we have to stop him." And Abel's knocking on the door, begging his brother to let him in. And Cain just lines up a cannon and just blasts him with a cannon he's just goo and a brain left pretty much when he's done. It's pretty great because, even in Gaiman's world, the two just keep, and especially without Morpheus there to keep them in line, they just keep doing their eternal struggle of death and reemergence.
You know what would be really cool as far as like crossing over or to see in this crossover? If he took them to the Dollhouse family.
I mean, he's likely to, since he's already played with that a little bit.
Yeah.
He did take us, because Cain and Abel control the House of Secrets and House of Mystery in the Dreaming. Mm-hmm. So he did take us to both of those houses, which was pretty cool. So
that's always, since I read it, that's been my favorite arc of Sandman, was that Dollhouse family are just some of the best work out of that book. And that's saying a lot because that whole tome is amazing.
It really is. And for those of you that still haven't read that book, you need to. And if you haven't read Lock and Key, you need to. And then you need to read this series.
I need to order the second big like hardcover omnibus in the series.
Yeah, did you get the leather bound?
Yeah, yeah. And I've got the first one. I actually didn't.
Same
you get
set
that
I have. I did not know.
I think Roger did, but I think you told him to.
Maybe.
I think that was what it was.
So. Yeah, it's a beautiful set. It's a great story, and this, like I said, this series ties right into it. You should definitely check it out if you've read the other two series. And I would be really surprised if you hadn't checked it out, to be honest with you.
Nice. Putting it on the to-do list.
Yeah. So there you go. Not only did I give you one book to read, I gave you 2 entire series to read.
Just
homework. Not every week can I do that for everybody.
Craig being like, here's your to-do list for the summer. Go for it.
Pretty much, yep.
Well, all right, Matt. What you got up this week, brother?
So I pulled a book from the archives. This is one that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. From Image Comics back in the early 2000s. It is a graphic novel called The Pro. Are you guys familiar with this one?
I actually am. Do you have the autographed version?
No, I don't. I guess you're bringing that up because you do.
No, I mean, they just, a lot of the, I used to own it, yes, but The Pro came with a, just as one of their standard issues. I had a lot of them that were autographed.
Caleb, have you read this?
I've not. I've heard about it, but I have not read it.
So tell me what you've heard.
It's just been in passing, people saying, "Oh, this was a cool thing." It's so like I said, I know very little about it other than that it exists, and it's kind of got this weird. I say weird. It's kind of got like a cult following in comics. It's one of those things like it was a book or a movie that just garnered a weird following and a weird love for the book that you see happen from time to time.
So, well, like what kind of following would you describe? Like who's following this book and the vibe? It'd be interesting.
That I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. But it's kind of like, you have a movie. I think, for instance, I'll just use this as an example of a thing that garners cult following, not necessarily a transference, but it's like The Crow. So that, the Crow, not the best movie in the world, but like the love for that movie, it transcended what the movie should have garnered. Another one's like Rocky Horror Picture Show, total cult classic, that it's just beloved. But again, I'm not saying that those are like the subject matter's transference in any way, just kind of the, how people latch onto something and just follow it, despite the fact it wasn't like a major blockbuster or anything.
So this was the creative team on this one is a group of friends. Garth Ennis does the script. Amanda Connor does the pencils and the lettering. Jimmy Palmiotti, her husband, actually does the inks, and the colors are by Paul Mounts. This is a story that Garth Ennis, Amanda Connor, and Jimmy Palmiotti apparently came up with while they were all hanging out with casually, decided to pitch the story, and Jimmy Palmiotti is the one that actually, quote unquote, sold the idea to Image Comics. It's gone on to go through several reprintings. It turned out to be a much bigger hit than any of them really thought it would be, specifically Garth Ennis. Mm-hmm. So this story, very, very subversive, to nobody's surprise. It is the story of a young Caucasian single mother who works at Denny's by day and works as a prostitute by night to make extra cash. And she has a hard go of it. Working as a street prostitute is not so much like so many movies portray. So things are rough for her. She's barely scraping by. The story opens up where she's actually getting shorted cash by a John and then almost killed when she confronts him on it. Meanwhile, there is a and apparently he has the powers to imbue human beings with superpowers. And he is talking to himself, to his narration robot, who chronicles his adventures, apparently, that anybody can be a superhero. If they just had the ability to do so, they had the ability to do super things, any given person would be a hero. And he's following this particular individual and decides to imbue her with superpowers. So she wakes up superpowered, much to her surprise. And when this alien imbues her with these powers, he also lets the local earthly analog of the Justice League know that he has done so. So they show up at her apartment. And it is a very easy to interpret analog for the Justice League, done in pretty hilarious fashion. The Batman analog in particular is interesting. He's called The Knight, and for some reason doesn't wear pants as part of his superhero outfit. He wears what looks to be a chainmail cloth over his groin and no pants. But he does have his have his young tag-along called the Squire. There's the Wonder Woman analog, Superman analogs right up front. The Flash analog is called Speedo, and yeah, he wears a Speedo. She's unimpressed with their offering to join the League. She's just trying to get by. She's full on got a somewhat negative and cynical outlook on life, given her experience as a Denny's waitress and prostitute. And the book goes on. The team is basically trying to influence her to be a hero and to help people. She's just really not very interested in any of that. She's more interested in not being miserable, essentially. The Amanda Connor does the artwork on this, and she does a really good job, because it's at its heart kind of dark material. I mean, you are talking about the challenges of a street prostitute here, but it's done in about as a light-hearted way as it could be. Very subversive to the superhero genre, as Garth Ennis is well known to do, most notably for The Boys. But it is a lot of fun to read. It is funny. There's an outrageous scene in here that you really got to see to believe, of where she is performing oral sex on the Superman analog, and the way that scene ends, you'll have to just check it out. It's pretty incredible, and again, very, very subversive. Garth Ennis just taking apart the superhero genre and having a lot of fun with it. There are a lot of great reviews from comic creators are included in this book. John Cassidy, Mark Waid, Gail Simone, Brian K. Vaughan all give this very positive reviews, just because it is a lot of fun, and it is a well done piece of material, the writing and the artwork. However, one creator that was not a fan is one Steranko. Mr. Steranko was not a fan of this. Jim Steranko's called this creative team terrorists for this little piece of work. He was not a fan of what they did. So, of course, in fashion, they dedicated the book to him.
That's amazing.
So, yeah. So it's easy to find. You can find it on at your local comic book shop. You can find it all over any kind of online retailer. It's very easy to find. This was actually optioned, believe it or not. This has actually been optioned for a movie. I believe that happened a couple of years ago. Nothing's come of it, of course, but the thought of this actually being put on the big screen or the small screen is pretty hilarious. That sounds like something that Amazon very well could do, based on the success of The Boys, or somebody wanting to ape that success. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, I can only hope this would be brought onto the big screen because it would be pretty outrageously hilarious to see.
Well, the way you described it reminds me a lot of Rick Veitch's Brat Pack. So, and I love that story. So I think that would be
Well,
really cool to kind of see.
this is just straight up comedy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, the Brat Pack's pretty dark and disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
This is just straight up slapstick comedy. You can read this and full on it's supposed to make you laugh.
Okay. So you don't feel bad about laughing at the parts, unlike Brat Pack, where I
It's
laughed
not-
and then felt shame.
It's not like Brat Pack. It's not like The Boys where it's just really, I mean, it's just dark and dirty feeling. This is like I said, the way Amanda Conner tells the story and her artistic stylings, it's just very much got a very lighthearted, this is all just a joke, it's okay
Right.
to laugh at it, it's that kind of story.
Nice. It still cracks me up they dedicated the book to Steranko.
Yeah. So that's why I was interested to see what you said you had heard of it and the buzz. I was really curious what what exactly you had heard out in the wild about it.
It's just one of those things, like I couldn't have told you the details. I just know that, like, for a book that I don't think a ton of people know about, it's like the people who love this book, and that's really what I know about it, and that was it.
I guarantee you, if you've collected comics for any period of time, you've seen the cover to this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty iconic cover.
Yeah. And Amanda Conner, I mean, she goes full on in this. I mean, there's some pretty graphic sexual stuff in this, and she seems to have a blast illustrating it.
she does not stray away from that stuff normally.
Mm-mm.
Oh man,
no, she doesn't give a shit. She's
no,
let her go wild.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think.
Good stuff.
As far as comic history goes, you've got Amanda and Jimmy. You've got Walt and Wheezy. Are there any other like power couples in comics that I'm thinking about?
Oh, I don't pay much mind to that, so I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah. There's a few married teams that are just like.
I was going to joke and give one, but I don't want to give them any.
No,
publicity.
I know where you're going with that, but no. pump your brakes. So
yeah,
I know exactly who you're thinking about, though. But yeah, it's cool to see like couples just play off each other as well as they do. So nice. Well, you know how back in the day, it used to be really easy to jump in the middle of an arc, right? Or jump in the middle of a story. You didn't need to find a new number one as a jumping on point. And that's kind of changed in the last 10 to 15 years, especially with the birth of, the way that things are written for trades. But every once in a while, you get a moment where you can dive into a story and they don't change the numbering on, but they just give you a jumping on point. And this past week gave us a really good example of those. So I thought I would talk about it here. Guardians of the Galaxy number 13, or if you're going by the legacy numbering, it's number 175, came out this past week. And I picked it up based on the cover alone, which is rare, not something I usually do, because the cover alone shows two characters who are part of this team now, or who are going to be a part of this team, that are not traditionally Guardians. And so I was like, oh, okay, let me see what this is about, because those are my boys. And when I say my boys, you guys kind of should automatically know I'm talking about Wiccan and Hulkling, right? Especially when you're talking about Marvel, like those are my dudes. So I was like, what, Wiccan and Hulkling, what are they doing with the Guardians? Which, if you've been keeping up with those two, Hulkling is now the Emperor of the Kree Skrull Alliance. Like, he's brought those two together. He's kind of a space lord, hashtag monster magnet kind of guy. So to see what they're doing in Guardians was kind of a really cool spot. And I was like, well, am I going to be able to jump into the middle of Guardians and know what's going on? And the answer is, yeah, I was able to, and I didn't miss a beat. So this was written by some dude. I don't know if you guys have heard of him before. I don't think he's done a lot. His name's Al Ewing. Who knows if he has a career in comics or will ever write anything super good or not. But it was drawn by Juan Figueroa, and Federico Bleed did the colors. And man, just talk about like locking me in. This story was great. So like I said, Hulkling is now an emperor. The Wiccan is his like court wizard as they lead the Kree Skrull alliance, and the world of Hala, which is this kind of central hub of the it's basically the throne world, which is it's always been the throne world of the Kree. They're not having the best of times. Like the world's been kind of rocked and beat up a little bit. Uh, but now they find themselves under siege by these giant creatures, these things that are called the Progenators. And I wasn't familiar with the Progenators. I'd never seen them before, but they kind of had, a familiar look. They kind of look like celestials. So I decided to go in and dig in to see what they were. And apparently, these are creatures that were created by Al Ewing in his Royals series, where it was based on the Inhumans. And so, if the Kree were essentially they used their Kree DNA to develop the Inhumans. The Progenators are the same concept, except what they did is they showed up early on in the Kree's development as kind of like Cro-Magnon Kree, and they experiment on them. So they're what led to the Kree's becoming the Kree. So kind of the grandparents, if you will, of the Inhumans. And so they're attacking Hala. They've come up on the radar. They're like, oh, some things have shown up, and these are critters that we helped invent. So let's these are our science experiments. So let's figure out what's going on with those. Which leads to a lot of death, a lot of destruction. And if you haven't been keeping up with this, you might be kind of surprised to know that the Super Skrull is part of Hulkling's Imperial Guard. He's to see a Skrull, especially the Super Skrull, working alongside the Kree can be kind of weird if you if you follow that history. But they're kind of making things happen. And so since the planet is under attack, the Super Skrull, he's trying to call in everybody he can, including the Guardians of the Galaxy. So he hits Nova up on the hotline. It's like, hey, you got to come over here. And Nova's all like, bro, we're not your personal police force. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy. You can't just call us up anytime you need something. It's a big galaxy. But Nova's already like halfway to the planet. Like they're on the way because it is a level 8 threat on whatever that they've got going on there. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the rest of the team, folks like Drax and Marvel and Photon, they're kind of scoping out this new planet that just popped up on the radar. And it's weird because a science team had been sent here before and they lost contact, and they weren't sure what's going on. Maybe they just lost the ability to communicate, or maybe something bad happens. Who knows? And they're scoping it out, and they stumble upon something that lets them know that this team met a really tragic and terrible end at the hands of somebody. They don't know who it was, but there's literally heads on pikes. And as they start scoping around, what they realize is that this planet is a hub, or somebody, a little camp that's been set up. Basically, it's a group of Skrulls who are like fire god worshippers, and they're getting ready to reach out and reclaim what they think is their birthright, which is the universe. They're the brethren of the Forgotten Flame, and so they've set up basically a cult of fire worshiping Skrulls that are going to set out to take over the universe. Meanwhile, over on Hala, the team shows up. You've got Moondragon, and you've got obviously Gamora and Peter Quill show up. Rocket's kicking it, Groot's there, and they start whipping ass on these Progenators, destroying them. They manage to save the head of one of them to send a message back saying, hey, this is our galaxy. You can't just use us as playthings. And they send it back. But Peter Quill apparently is just getting back from exile in a pocket universe where in our time it was mere seconds, but I guess in his time it was decades. And in this pocket universe, apparently, he was there for so long. He fell in love. He had a kid, like he had a whole family. And now that he's back, no time has passed between, for Gamora, but it has for him. And she's really struggling with this because there's a distance between all of them that she can't explain. it's and for, like I said, for her, no time had passed, but for him, he's dealing with a whole lot of heartbreak, and he's having a really hard time jumping right back in to be a part of that relationship. So after discovering the fire team, the fire cult, that team needs to get back to the rest of the Guardians and kind of explain what's going on, and they really want to know what's happening. I'm not a giant fan or somebody who's real familiar with like the cosmic universe out of Marvel. So if you were to ask me about the character of Quasar, I couldn't tell you a whole lot about him, him or her, or the people who have carried that mantle. But apparently something new, and this is one of the reasons I also think it's important to read this book. They are establishing something new with the character of Quasar in this book. They need somebody while they're on this team, kind of inspecting and searching out this quote unquote fire cult, but they need to be stealthy. And none of these folks are meant for stealth. Like that's not their cuppa. But Quasar, in this sense, knows a way to get somebody who is. If you remember back in continuity, there was another Quasar. Her name was Avril Kincaid, and she was trained by Shield, so she's kind of a spy. Kind of a spy. Quasar taps his gauntlets together, and all of a sudden, Avril Kincaid is standing before them as Quasar. It's not the Quasar that was there before. And so that what they explain is that one of the things that they've learned is that they can bang those quantum bands together, and they switch places. It sends them to a little again another pocket universe where they kick it and hang out for a while. And the story kind of explains it's kind of like Marvel and Rick Jones back in the day, and this kind of explains the mechanics of how that works. But I guess that was never explained before. Again, when it comes to the cosmic stuff in the Marvel universe, I'm not your dude. But so if anybody else knows kind of some more of the history of the mechanics of how that works, jump in and let us know. Come to the Facebook page or whatever. Anyway, the more important, or I guess if your name is Matt Trogdon, the most important part of this story happens in the last couple of pages. So as Hala is kind of pulling itself back together, and the main Guardians team is kind of recoiling from beating this weird sub-celestial team of the Progenators, green lightning starts to pop all around, and a voice comes over and is just kind of like garnering everybody's attention. And it's a very regal voice, a very benevolent voice. Someone who has mastered the, not only magic, but also science, and who feels that, limiting that ability and his majesty, you might call it, and his prowess to one world is really a disservice to everybody. And if anybody is going to guard the galaxy, he might as well lead that team. And none other than Victor Von fucking Doom pops into the picture, and is going to play part and parcel into this Guardians of the Galaxy storyline. So, Al Ewing, awesome. Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm a fan. Not a huge fan, but a fan. Doctor Doom, rad. Good art, check. This book has everything. So don't be afraid, if you haven't been reading Guardians, to jump in on this, the 13th issue. Yeah, it's right in the middle of a run, but who cares? Like, it never was a problem for people for 60 years of reading comics. And the whole idea that you can't start a new comic unless it's number one is kind of a new development, which I think should be rooted out. I think it's a terrible way of these kind of long form continuities. Terrible way.
So he's positioning Dr. Doom as a good guy.
No, he's not positioning him as a good guy. He's positioning Dr. Doom as a bully who
well, you said benevolent.
I was being sarcastic.
Oh, okay.
That was
okay.
Sorry. That was I think Dr. Doom thinks of himself as benevolent sometimes. He's going to rule you so he can make all the good decisions that you can't make. That's benevolent. But yeah, no, there was more than a twinge of sarcasm.
I like benevolent better.
Benevolent. That's what I'm naming my first child. No, Doctor Doom is absolutely a bully in this. He's showing up to take over and run the show because everybody else is inadequate and inefficient and doesn't know what they're doing. And if there's a galactic cosmic threat, then damn it, he's the only one who can deal with it. And why should he only be the king of Latveria when he can, be the the God King of the universe? So,
and
that's
Al Ewing writing Doctor Doom. That could be amazing.
I think you should check it out. It's like the issue 14 is where he's going to come. I think you're going to get the full scope and the full picture of it. So, I think you would dig this. Plus, you get to see Groot like rip apart a giant robot, which is fun. So not very talkative while he's doing it, but he does the thing. So yeah, I really dug this.
Groot, not very talkative.
So yeah, this was a win for me, guys. Like I'm really impressed with this, as I am with most things that Al Ewing does, and can say zero things wrong with the art in this book. It was really, really fun. Gorgeous pages. Love these character designs. I say that there's a few scenes where Hulkling's face is a little whack, but I think that's also Hulkling's a shapeshifter, so I think people have a hard time really reading on what he's supposed to look like. And I will say also, these are the oldest versions of these characters that I can remember seeing in comics. Like they look like they don't look like teenagers. These are mid-20s men. So I think maybe this is setting the precedent of what these figures are going to look like as like comics moves them out of being teenagers to being full-fledged adults living their life. So like I said, that journey has been awesome. For me at least.
Well, there goes my hope for another Young Avengers book.
I think you can get another Young Avengers book, but I'd rather see, as they've gotten older, I'd rather see Wiccan and Hulkling be part of the Avengers. And set up for, I think Champions right now is filling that gap for me for the Young Avengers. But what I think is cool about it is, so for most of my Marvel heroes that I really, really love and enjoy, these folks existed for 40 or 50 years before I was born, right? Like Spider-Man, the Hulk, all of them, created in the 60s. I was alive when Wiccan and Hulkling were invented, and I've kind of gotten to see them, and they've kind of grown with me as a comics reader. And to see them like come into from being teenagers to full-fledged adults is kind of a neat experience, because it's not something that I'm used to in Marvel. And I think people are seeing a lot of that the same way with characters, like some of these younger figures, like, America Chavez, or even like you say in the Champions. A lot of the young Avengers folks, like seeing them grow with us as readers has been kind of a cool experience, because it's not something that I think a lot of us were used to outside of a few characters. It wasn't like there wasn't a lot of characters you could say that about for my generation.
I mean, you made me feel old, so I'm just going to be quiet.
Nah, you got old man powers. We already established that.
Caleb talking about 40 or 50 years before he was born in the 60s. Here I was born in 71.
So I was born on 87, so I guess it wouldn't be 40 years. So I think Hulk
close to 30.
Hulk was 68, I think. I'm trying to remember back. So not quite that long.
Don't get me lying.
But it's a whole ass lifetime for a lot of folks. So
it is.
I dig it. Well, all right, that was fun. I'm gonna have to go read both of those issues that you both told me about, and check those out, which is I'm glad you put that on the radar. I needed it. So with that being said, next week on Wednesday, as is usually the case, new books are hitting the shelves. And I am, as always, curious about what you gentlemen are planning on picking up this next week.
Well, I'm going to jump out and throw one out that I'm kind of jumping on a limb because I don't know much about the publisher or the creator, but it's Behemoth Comics and it's Damian Conley. And it was the name of this book that drew me in. It's called You Promised Me Darkness. And the synopsis here is approximately every 75 years, Halley's comet orbits around the sun. And every time this happens, people around the world are born with incredible abilities, so forth, so on. And, bad stuff happens apparently. So.
Yes. That's like
That's
synopsis.
the synopsis. That is the official synopsis.
So forth and so on, and bad stuff.
And bad stuff happens. Yep. I'm going to pick this book up, though.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to from Image Comics, Haha number 4. I just discovered that this is only a 6-issue series. The consistent writer on this is throughout the series has been W. Maxwell Price. It's either Price or Prince. It's indicated as 2 different ways on what I'm looking at here, and I do not recall.
And so on.
Yeah, forth and darkness and
it's Prince.
Okay. The art on this issue, as the art changes, this is Patrick Horvath. This is all going to be watercolors. And I'm looking forward to this just because I have no idea what to expect. Each issue is independent of the last. So the nature of that, and plus each story has been good. The last one, I feel like was the weakest of the first 3, but was still pretty good. But just the unpredictability of this short series has kind of got me interested. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, dude,
so the only common thread is that they're clowns, right? Their stories about clowns.
Yeah.
I've loved this series so much. It's been so much fun, and I hate clowns, but yeah, this has been a trip. I've dug it. So I am going to grab excitedly. So a new book from Boom Studios called The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. This is written by a guy who, man, when he hit my radar, he hit it hard. And I've just loved everything I can get of him. And that's Mr. Ram V. Also with art by Philip Andrade. So this story, a powerful new series for fans of the wicked and the divine and the dreaming, like I said, comes from Ram V. So it explores the fine line between living and dying in Mumbai through the lens of magical realism. With humanity on the verge of discovering immortality, the avatar of death is fired and relegated to the world below to live out her now finite days in the body of a 20-something-year-old Layla Starr in Mumbai. Struggling with her newfound mortality, Layla has found a way to be placed in time and in the time and place to where the creator of immortality will be born. But will Layla take her chance to permanently reverse the course or the future of history? Or does a more shocking fate await her? Bum, bum, bum.
So forth and so on.
So,
and
yeah.
Bad things happen.
Yeah. Does a more shocking fate await her? My money says it does.
Wink, wink, nod, nod. No, dude, I like everything.
It's bound to change the comic threads forever.
One can only hope. Everything I've read from Ram V has been awesome. I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm loving what he's doing on Swamp Thing right now. Went back and I've read some of his stuff from back in the day, some of his early stuff. Dude is just a strong writer. So he's one of those that I'm going to pick up most of what he puts out if I can. So check this out. Like I said, Boom Studios. Getting with it.
Awesome.
So, well, all right, guys. Did we leave anything out? We miss anything?
We covered everything.
All of the things have been covered.
Yeah. So forth and so on.
And bad things happen.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, all right. We hope you all have enjoyed listening to us babble on about the comics that we have read and enjoyed, and the art form that we love this week. We put out episodes every Sunday, or at least we try to. That makes us, it fills the hole in our lives that has been taken away from us by COVID, and removing each other from our presence. And we hope you've enjoyed it too. We really love doing this. If you want more, if you find yourself needing the interaction throughout the week, you can come be a part of our Facebook group. We are Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. Just type it in the search bar and it'll pop up for you. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We are constantly posting panels of what we're reading, stuff that we think is cool, things that we see out in the world. It's good times. Follow us on there. Tag us on stuff that you think is worthwhile. Let us know what we should be reading. We really enjoy it. So as always, we hope you have a great week. As we said in the introduction of the show, go out and get vaccinated. Yeah, you might feel like booty for a day or two, but it's well worth. That's an easy price to pay. Not a hard decision at all, and you'll make it through it. So, other than that, so forth, so on. Go forth and love comics.
Woo!